Welcome to the Sports MVT Insider, a platform where we are unrelenting in covering our women in sports, and we absolutely love celebrating those big moments and sometimes those small moments as well. But today we are focusing not on our athletes, but we are focusing on the people behind the scenes that actually ensure that our athletes get to perform at their best, they get to excel, and most importantly, they are fit and they're healthy. Today I'm joined by an absolutely phenomenal lady. She's actually a sports and exercise medicine physician. Her name is Dr. Phathokuhle Zondi. Doctor, how are you doing today?
It's good to be here with you, and I'm really great. Good.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we get into the wonderful work that you do to ensure that our athletes are fit and healthy, I would like to talk specifically about you. Tell us a little bit about who Phathokuhle is away from sports, away from the busyness of the work that you do, just when you're chilling at home, relaxing.
Who am I? That's still not an easy question, but there's a full answer to it. I am certainly one of the most cherished, I guess, roles that I play is as a mother to two young, dynamic, feisty girls, Ayeva and Zanessa, 7 and 4. I am a wife to a kind husband and loving husband, Andile. I am a daughter, a sister. I'm a girl who loves sports, actually, fundamentally, when I'm chilling at home, and loves to spend time with my family and very close friends. That's maybe the short summary of it.
All right, absolutely beautiful. Now, tell us how you actually fell in love with sports, and more specifically, sports and medicine, and how those came together.
It's such a beautiful story if I think about it in retrospect. But in terms of my interest with sports and sports medicine, I mean, I've always been one of those young girls who loved sports and quite literally played any sport that my timetable allowed to. So I was way back then, the only black girl who did synchronized swimming, just because heck, it was there to be done and there was a gap in my diary, so let me go do it. I wasn't any good at it, but I did it. But I mean, that was over and above sort of the cross country, the netball, the running, the softball, all of the other things that I did. Probably inspired by my parents, who were also very sporty and athletic, and sort of raised us in an environment where we would go to fun runs together as a family, where my dad would play tennis and we'd go and watch him. And so it was just something that as a family we did together. And that's probably where my love of sport came in. When it comes to medicine, I guess, high school, you have to make some career decisions. I, like many high school girls, wasn't quite sure. But I knew that I really was interested in the human body. I knew that biology really interested me. And one day I heard an interview with Professor Tim Noakes, who is one of South Africa's icons when it comes to exercise science and sports medicine. And it was an aha moment for me. It was quite literally eureka, because I was like, oh my gosh, there is medicine, which is a part that I'm curious about, and I can put it together with my love of sport and actually make a career of it. And the rest is history, as they say.
Oh, absolutely beautiful. That's such a great story. But I would also like for us to focus on the fact that you are a student athlete at UCT as well. Tell us about what it takes to be a successful student athlete and finding the balance between your books and actually performing on the sports field as well.
I mean, sports during varsity is one of the things that got me through varsity, I'll be very honest, because it was a place that I could express myself. I enjoyed it. I could release energy. I mean, obviously, there's a community, especially in team sports environments, that you also grow into there. So it really is a fulfilling platform and space. As a student athlete, I played at provincial level. So at my highest, I sort of played at the Western Province level of netball, and not sort of any further. So certainly, while there are challenges in being able to balance that, because there's the club training that you do with UCT and then also the provincial training that you do, it's probably not as much as the international athlete who's also competing at the world champs. But as with everything, it really is about time management. At that particular level, as I said, it really was about making sure that when I work, I work. Obviously, there was sports, and it probably meant that I did a little bit less, not none, a little bit less partying than some of my counterparts. Not none, but a little bit less, because obviously there's a little bit less time available to me. It does certainly become a greater challenge when you are even more competitive at a national level. And sometimes that does take making decisions like deferring some courses, because you know that you're on a journey. And that's okay, because the entire journey, when you look back, will be worth it.
Oh, absolutely beautiful. And I have to admit, Doctor, I love the honesty. I think sometimes we don't touch on the fact that it's less partying, and sometimes we almost make it seem like there's no partying at all. So I'm glad that you had some fun in varsity as well. I would like to focus on the fact that you were part of the SASCOC organization. You were more specifically involved with them as the team doctor for South Africa since 2010. Tell us a little bit about some of the ups and downs in this incredibly challenging role and some of the lessons that you've learned as well throughout your journey.
Absolutely. As you say, there have been very many ups and a few downs as well,
Mm,
and certainly a lot of growth along the journey. When I started working with SASCOC and the teams that they deliver to games, I was one of many team doctors. So typically speaking, at any of these games that you go to, like the Olympics, the Youth Olympics, the Commonwealth Games, there are more than one doctor, depending on obviously the size of the team. And so there's an incredible amount of growth that you can experience and learn from just the other doctors and the other team members, the physiotherapists and the rest of the medical team that you work with. And the beauty really is in collaborating, right? And working closely together to support the athletes. There's also an incredible amount of growth that you learn working with these athletes. And I mean, when you are servicing or supporting athletes at that level, you've got to raise your game, right? Because when you are working alongside athletes who are performing at Olympic Games or Commonwealth Games, these athletes have invested not just 4 years, but 8, 12 years, depending on when they started this journey and had that dream, to be at the Olympics. They are surrounded by professional coaches, professional other teams and staff that they work with on the ground who may or may not travel with them. And so you have to raise your game in order to be able to meet them where they are. And I feel quite strongly about that. And that's been a great privilege and a challenge as well, because obviously growing always comes with growing pains.
mm,
Um, there's a significant amount of pressure when you are at that stage of performance. And sometimes the athletes take it out in the environment, and it's part of how it just goes, right? You take it out on people that are closest to you, whether in proximity or in emotion. And also, as somebody who's worked with athletes, and I've had the privilege of not just working with them when they go to the games, but on the journey in many cases, you become invested in the journey, and so their pain is your pain, their loss is your loss, to some
yeah.
extent. And a big challenge is obviously trying to at sometimes remove yourself from the emotional aspect of this and still be able to make objective, sound clinical decisions.
Sure, absolutely incredible. Let's talk about some of the other roles that you've had. I know that you've been involved with SARU as well as World Rugby as well. What are some of the lessons that you've learned from this particular organization? Because also that's completely different to what you were doing at SASCOC.
It is. And the big difference there is that, SARU is obviously a federation, a single federation, and where SASCOC delivers teams to games. And typically speaking, you get
Mm,
involved there when you're just going to the games. With SARU and the federation, at least with their structure, you've got the opportunity to work with athletes over a period, whether it's a season, a full season, or obviously over a journey. If you're going, in my case, I worked with them as the junior Springboks for 2-3 years, and incredible. They are a very well-run organization. They are a very professional outfit, which comes with certain privileges in terms of the composition of the medical team, and certainly also the access that you have in terms of healthcare, in terms of sports performance, and in terms of the networks really, and the support that you can provide your athletes. That's been an incredible journey, and I continue to work with SARU for numerous reasons. But really, again, being able to support athletes at that level of performance, being able to travel with them to World Championships, what it allows you when you're working with athletes over a long time is to also develop a relationship with them,
mm.
and really sort of form a part of the team, from a management team perspective, and also just in terms of the athlete journey. And that's really incredible. The places that we've been, not just geographically, but also just emotionally, as a team is truly something special. And when that culminates to a win, like it did at the 2012 Junior World Cup, you just look back on the journey that you've been through, the highs, the lows, the injuries, the return to injuries, the setbacks, and it's just a privilege.
Oh, absolutely beautiful. Let me take you back to SASCOC specifically. Now, I would love for you to explain to me what is the Medical Advisory Commission and what is it tasked to do?
So the Medical Advisory Commission is a sub-commission of the High Performance Commission at SASCOC. And the High Performance Commission, if I can just start there, is really tasked to support athletes to perform at their highest levels when they get to the games. And so within the High Performance Commission, for instance, there's a Medical Advisory Commission, there's a Doping Subcommission, there's a Psychology Commission, there's a Coaching Commission, there's a University Sports Commission, and I'm not even naming them all. There's a Sports Science Commission. And of course, we all understand that it's all of these different facets that interact to enable an athlete to realize their full potential. So within the Medical Advisory Working Group, to answer your question specifically, we look at all the medical protocol and the medical support for the athletes. Our primary task really is to make nominations, or to basically develop a database of medical professionals that can support athletes throughout the Olympic cycle, but certainly at games as well, and then make nominations based on that database for teams that will travel with the athletes to these games. And essentially, we look at obviously the experiences of individuals within the industry, working with athletes at this particular level, and then obviously looking at specific sports codes depending on who's going. And then we also do sort of advisory work with federations. So we work with federations that need it. Some are more organized than others, or more developed, let me say, than others, and so don't necessarily need our sort of day-to-day input, but others would come to us, for instance, if they've got specific medical problems that they encounter throughout the cycle and they don't have their own medical commission, and they'll ask us to look at certain things, whether it's clinical cases, doping advice, whatever it might be, essentially also staffing for their old world championships or wherever they might be traveling.